GoPro, stop recording. Okay. And 1.5. Get up just a little bit. Hold on. Not yet. Okay. Good? Yep. Turn it around. There we go. And yep, good enough. That glare is fucked. Actually came out. I think that came out good right there. GoPro, stop recording.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So first and foremost, if wind starts becoming a little bit of a problem on the audio, I apologize. Y'all are just gonna have to deal with it. There's nowhere that I went so far that doesn't have a lot of wind in it aside of my couch, and nobody likes to see me on my couch. So we're going to be out here and we're going to talk about this today, and I'm just going to raise my voice to combat the wind a little bit. So here's what we're looking at, right? In the last video that I did about this, it was reviewing the rifle, right? This is a Arsenal SAM-7 SF, and in that video and in the ones prior to it, a bajillion people asked me about the long handguard from Magpul on the AK, and they wanted me to know what my thoughts were about it and that kind of deal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, right? So here's the thing. I don't want this video in any way to be perceived as if I hate this handguard, right? Because I really don't. I actually completely understand why it's designed the way it is. Its strengths really shine. They really do. But it does have some weaknesses and stuff like that, so we're going to talk about that now, right? First thing, we're going to go over stuff that I liked about it. First thing, I like having the extension, okay? I like having the ability to get out just a little bit further so I can get in control of more things out front of the gun, because as you can probably tell, the handguard for most AKs stops about here. And I have longer arms, so it's kind of nice to have a little bit greater reach, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting choked up on the gun really hard at any point, in all honesty. There's a lot of regular length AK handguards out there that are kind of thin. I personally prefer fatter ones, mostly because it gets you away from the hot components when this gun does start to heat up, and it does, okay? Because of the long stroke piston design in the gun, not only is it a little nose heavy, but pretty much everything up in here starts getting pretty hot. Like, not enough to fry good optics and stuff like that, like this RMR, which, by the way, I'm really digging on this setup, like, a lot. But it's enough to notice, and sometimes it's enough to have to get your hands off of. A lot of guys end up doing the Michael Jackson thing and wearing a single glove so that they can deal with what's going on up here, as well as do thumb reloads from the AK itself. Because if you start doing a lot of them, I don't care like how tough your hands are. If you sat there and did 400 reloads in dry fire practice without a glove, it's going to start to hurt. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. So I really do enjoy that, having the extension. I really enjoy the heat shielding in the handguard as well, because as you can probably tell, it is a non-free-floating handguard, right? But the heat shielding that's in it is fantastic. It does a great job of insulating heat away from your hand and venting it out in places that help you out the most. I've dropped a bunch of magazines back-to-back through this gun at once on multiple occasions, and maybe it's because it was colder outside or something, but I didn't notice heat building up at any point, which is something to be said of its own accord, because even when it is colder outside, you do notice everything starting to heat up quite a bit. on other types of handguards here. So the heat insulation and the fact that it doesn't like to stay hot, it bleeds out heat really good. I love that. So the extension and the heat shielding is fantastic, right? And realistically speaking, if you're looking into this handguard and if the following drawbacks don't really bother you, that in and of itself sells this thing, because it does exactly what it's designed to do. It is there to be a really good handguard. It's designed to be a really good heat shield, and it's designed to give you greater extension on the gun itself. Now, there are a couple of drawbacks to this. Number one, and it's especially problematic on this individual rifle. In order to mount this handguard to the gun, right, you have to cut off the retainer for a stock handguard, right? Now, is that a big deal to some? Well, it depends, really. Because this thing forces you to cut that retainer off, and then via a bracing system that you can't really see on the inside of this, there's assembly videos or installation videos already out on YouTube that show how to install this thing. There's a set of braces that hook up to the barrel itself, right? And another thing that happens is that if you're using it in conjunction with like a Ultimec or something, that's a lot of stuff bolted to the barrel of your gun. Now, is that going to wreak havoc on your accuracy and stuff? Well, if you saw the accuracy testing from the Sam 7 review, to a point, no, it doesn't really. But as far as mechanically speaking, it does impact the performance of your individual barrel, right? Again, not a lot, and especially if you're making this just like a red dot sporting rifle and you're using it to just fight with generally, and your individual preference is like 300 and in with it, no, it doesn't bother it at all. But it is something to consider, because once you cut that retainer off, two things are going to happen. Either A, you're stuck with this handguard, or B, you're going to have to buy a bolt-on retainer in case you want to swap the thing out at a later date and use either the shorter version of this or something else. Now, another con that it definitely has is that it's heavier than a shorter handguard. I mean, that should be self-explanatory, but it's not to a lot of guys, because, you know, a lot of times people will bolt stuff onto their gun, and it's one of those deals where it's like they don't really notice the sum of the total parts as far as weight is concerned, and then when they're done, they're like, holy crap, this rifle is really dense. And this does not help that at all. But then again, that's kind of the nature of the beast. Most handguards that are in long form on AKs add not even so much a lot of weight, but enough nose weight to notice, right? So stuff that helps to balance the gun out, like a stock and a good grip, that kind of gets nullified for the most part. And there's still times, even when I'm out here just doing a lot of drills and stuff, where I notice myself doing this number a lot, because if you're out with any rifle for several hours or just walking around with it, or if you have it slung up for long periods of time, it's going to start feeling heavy. This guy starts to feel heavier faster, right? So it's really one of those deals where you have to weigh those pros and cons. Now, if there are guys out there that don't like the idea of a bolt-on handguard retainer, I certainly understand where you're coming from. I really do. A lot of guys just don't like bolt-on retainers because of how they look, because it's like a clamp system, and you see bolts on either side, and it takes a set screw to make sure that everything stays where it is, and then there's a bunch of Loctite. It's just more screws to pay attention to. I completely understand that. So that in and of itself might turn some people away from this handguard, and I get it, right? So, you know, end of day, what do I think? Personally, with all the shooting that I've done with this so far, and realistically speaking, it's not like I've spent a year with this handguard or anything like that, but I have spent just a little over 2,000 rounds now, because this thing is insanely fun to shoot. Because I spent a little over 2,000 rounds with this handguard on board the gun. What I'm going to tell you right now is me personally, because I'm used to just, you know, some of the drawbacks of the shorter handguards, and that's just the shorter handguards give you a shorter extension, and sometimes you have to peel your hands away from stuff like Ultimax and things like that, just to deal with heat. Me personally, I'm used to that, and I personally like just the fact that there aren't ounces out front on the negative portion of the weight bias, you know. So me personally, I'm gonna unbolt this thing off of my gun. I'm probably gonna go to Carolina Outfitters or whatever that website's called, and get a bolt-on retainer for it so I can replace this, probably with some Russian red wood, just because A, wood is a really good insulator for heat in the first place, and B, it's lighter, you know, so that's really on a personal preference type deal though, you know. With this handguard here, I mean, there's a love-hate relationship from guys that own it, and the reviews on it are very polarizing. Some guys love it, some guys hate it. What I will say that you really do need to pay attention to if you're digging this and if you want it, and if you want it, too much monster this morning. If you want it, is make sure that when you apply the braces that clamp the handguard to the barrel, make sure that you're applying Loctite, okay? Because they are going to get very hot because they're clamped to your barrel. And it's dependent on those things to keep the handguard attached to the gun, right? So don't try to torque them into oblivion, but do use some Loctite. And when you're using the Loctite, a lot of guys don't know this little tip also. Apply thread locker to the screws, and a lot of guys want thread locker into the surface that they're mounting something into as well. What you can do is that you can just apply Loctite to the threads of the little Allen screw or whatever it is, and this is like across the board. You can apply a lot of Loctite to those threads of that screw. Start to screw in and then unscrew it, screw back in, unscrew it, and then start your tightening process once you have that locked down on all the screws. Just so that the thread locker that's in the screws gets a healthy dose on the threads of what you're essentially bolting that screw into, right? And it's another thing that you really want to pay attention to on this particular rifle, because this is a portion. These screws are bolted, again, to the barrel of the rifle, and as you could probably surmise, they get a lot of heat, they get a lot of vibration, that kind of deal. So, you know, if you want it, and if you dig it, like if the cons that I mentioned are not really big cons to you, like if you got a shorter Warsaw length stock, and you have longer arms or whatever, and you really dig this, you like its heat shielding, and the extra capabilities that it gives you, because it gives you the ability to mount stuff to the actual rail. Really, that's all I got to say. It's one of those things where it's like, I acknowledge that this thing is awesome. It does its job, it does exactly what it's designed to do, and it does it very well. However, I'm not going to have it on the gun anymore because of the cons that I mentioned, right? It does add some nose weight, and I'm not a huge fan of that. It does feel it does feel a little awkward in that, because there's extra weight up front and because it's nice and long, it feels like this whole section right here is a telephone pole, so it feels like I'm nice and slow when I'm swinging from one place to another. So for me personally, I want to just go with a more traditional handguard. That's my opinion though, you know. So whether or not that means something to you is up to you to decide. So that's all I got really, guys. Now, check this out. We have more classes on the way, and I understand you guys are beating me over the head with a lot of things. What I'm working out now is I'm starting to worry about starting to travel a little more westward, right? I was talking to guys about what they would feel about a Nevada class and all this other shit, and I was then inundated with a bajillion messages at where at and all this other stuff. Now, that will come, but there are other people that I've reached out to that are going to start pushing me a little bit further westward. So guys that want training in various places that are on the other side of the coast from where I live, and that's Tennessee. You know, places like Montana and shit like that, hint, hint. That's coming. However, there's other stuff that's coming in before that, right? Like if you look on the website, and I'll provide a link for that in the description below. We have a low light, no light only class where you can get a lot of reps with the pistol in the dark. We're doing that at Bud's Gun Shop, which is great because we can essentially turn the lights off at will. We don't have to work at weird hours, that kind of thing. So we can do a lot of that there. Performance pistol is coming up also at the same place, and that's a further, faster, more accurate techniques for efficiency kind of pistol class versus the martial side of the house, which is what we do most of the time, right? And this is one of those classes that really emphasizes individual skills, how to go faster in a calculated way rather than just trying to be fidgety and all that stuff. And it's a really good place to finally be able to go full speed, and that's encouraged, right? And we can develop how to graduate what full speed means for you and all that. So that's a great class that's coming up. It's also oriented towards the pistol. We have the shotgun class in Louisiana. Again, we're creeping a little bit more westward. We have one slot open for our early April class for Pistol 2, and that's in Arkansas. And we have more stuff that's coming up. We're going to Maine again for a Pistol 1 and 2 class, and that'll be in September. So there's a lot of stuff open. I'm looking for more rifle classes and stuff like that coming up. So just stay updated with it. If you have any questions, you know, you can go in the comments or you can shoot it to me. For those of you who have like my contact information or my email, which is provided on the website, or for those that want to host us, right, that have individual ranges that want to know what it takes to host us in various locations, what you can do is you can message me or ask me about it. We'll get together and we'll start talking back and forth on how we can make that happen. So there you go. You know, all those opportunities are there. If you want to donate to us through Patreon, that's great, because we use that money to train a lot of people, military folks and stuff like that, that just don't have the budget to go do it themselves. We take them from the unit. We pay for their flight, their food, their ammo, and a lot of times we provide gear so they can come out and train for us. So where that money goes is straight to them. And there's a benefit for you guys there too. There's a two-tier system in there. One is pretty self-explanatory. The other one isn't as much. For $35 a month, essentially, you can come out and train with us as much as you want for as long as you want, so long as you're signed up to $35 a month. And if you look at our full price on what you call it, on the website, that's actually pretty easy to do some math on and figure out, holy crap, this is a steal. So there's a little bit of back and forth on who that benefits. So, I mean, even if you don't want to do that, if you just want to throw a nickel at us one time or a dime or something, it goes a lot further than you realize. So there's that. We also have a discussion page on Facebook. A lot of guys on there. Well over 16,000 people go and converse on various things and ask various questions on different topics. And there's a lot of smart guys providing good answers and different perspectives, because I'm not always right and my opinion is a opinion, not the opinion. So there's that. And essentially that's it, man. If you like this handguard, really give it a spin. But acknowledge its faults, acknowledge the scaling system on your pros versus cons, figure out which is more important to you, and then essentially move on. So, with that being said, guys, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.